And the reason is because I always say I've spoken about edge for the last 500 years, but because 500 to 600 years it actually is. But it never has really taken off to the last extent. And my statement today always is, well, it will start taking off because of 5G, low latency. Yeah. But what do you think in that space?
I think it depends on the domain, right? Yeah. I think, so let me say a few things. So firstly, I do see it taking off already. Okay. So I see more and more where there are real tangible examples. And again, the example we were talking about earlier today is a good one. You know, increasingly we see robotics coming in and taking over traditional inspection routes.
Exactly, operate around it, you name it. Yeah.
And that is nothing more than an edge device. I mean, the robot is processing things on the edge.
Yeah, because it's just a transport of sensors almost.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in that sense, you know, that's a great example of where edge is real and happening today. Similarly, you know, we're starting to see real requirements where we have very diverse, complex networks. Yeah. So a couple of areas where that's happening. Of course, Shell has the second largest EV charging network in the world. Yeah. And increasingly, you know, that is an edge technology. Yeah. You need
increasingly, yes.
Increasingly so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's, you know, a key area. And then similarly, you know, we also have very remote locations, increasingly much smaller, much more distributed, much more diverse energy assets. And those smaller assets, you can't deploy a full DCS system to support that. Yeah. So you need something that's credible at the edge. I think the question is then, you know, how do you see that edge evolving? And to me, you know, what we're backing is the fact that we will have small compute, so we want to try and minimize the footprint, but also...
But you will have some.
We have some. Yeah. And you want to be able to cloud connect, and you want to be able to containerize, and it must have machine learning in its core.
But the way I look at that is, of course, you train in the cloud, deploy then in Kubernetes or whatever on the edge, more or less.
Exactly right. And that's very much our philosophy is, you know, train in the cloud, deploy to the edge, and manage from the cloud, and have that cloud supervision in place to enable us to deal with multiple edge devices. Yeah.
And that's where we also, NVIDIA will play a role.
For sure.
Because otherwise you don't have the capacity at the edge to really make that happen.
And back to the robotics example, I mean, that's exactly what we're doing. Yeah. I mean, you know, if you talk about, you know, using some of the latest Jetson devices, we're using those today in some of the robotics to deploy some of our machine learning algorithms directly to the robots.
Yeah, we did exactly the same in some of our implementations, and using Jetson as our core for running machine vision in that particular case. Yeah. So you also see it, because also link to 5G. Yeah. Because I spent 3 years in Malaysia rolling out 5G. I learned a lot about it because I had developments, that's especially with camera images. Yeah. Because you can do real-time data streaming, which there's no other way of doing unless you have fiber networking, which of course often is very expensive.